Born in 1883, Kahlil Gibran was an enlightened Lebanese philosopher, author, poet, artist, and mystic who immigrated to the United States when he was young. As a writer, he inspired a transformation in Arabic literature with his simple and direct style, as well as his choice of highly relatable themes. Perhaps surprisingly, some of his best-known works were written in English and achieved popular acclaim among many American readers. Published in 1923, The Prophet became Kahlil Gibran's most famous work. This book, comprised of 26 poetic essays, was begun while he was still a youth in Lebanon. The Prophet made Kahlil Gibran one of the best-selling poets in the world. Its inspirational words have been quoted in various books and are still cited widely today for their uplifting wisdom and clarity. In a 1991 lecture given in Taiwan, also known as Formosa, Supreme Master Ching Hai read passages from the Prophet and revealed that Kahlil Gibran was not only a gifted poet but also an enlightened master.
他是一位名是从阿拉伯过来美国的，他写得很漂亮，他的文笔非常美，他把我们要讲的东西集中起来，然后表达非常明白，小话不过多义了，很漂亮。他走了以前他徒弟们就合起来问他一些最后的问题不过这个人好像他很懂了，很开悟徒弟当然不多，不过很开悟。
Today, we would like to share with you the following essays from The Prophet by Kahlil Gibran. Prayer. Then a priestess said, "Speak to us of prayer." And he answered, saying, "You pray in your distress and in your need. Would that you might pray also in the fullness of your joy and in your days of abundance. For what is prayer but the expansion of yourself into the living ether? And if it is for your comfort to pour your darkness into space, it is also for your delight to pour forth the dawning of your heart. And if you cannot but weep when your soul summons you to prayer, she should spur you again and yet again, though weeping, until you shall come laughing. When you pray, you rise to meet in the air those who are praying at that very hour, and whom, save in prayer, you may not meet. Therefore, let your visit to that temple invisible be for nothing but ecstasy and sweet communion. For if you should enter the temple for no other purpose than asking, you shall not receive. And if you should enter into it to humble yourself, you shall not be lifted. Or even if you should enter into it to beg for the good of others, you shall not be heard. It is enough that you enter the temple invisible. I cannot teach you how to pray in words. God listens not to your words, save when He Himself utters them through your lips. And I cannot teach you the prayer of the seas and the forests and the mountains. But you who are born of the mountains and the forests and the seas can find their prayer in your heart. And if you but listen in the stillness of the night, you shall hear them saying in silence, Our God, who art our winged self, it is thy will in us that willeth. It is thy desire in us that desireth. It is thy urge in us that would turn our nights, which are thine, into days which are thine also. We cannot ask thee for anything else, for thou know our needs before they are born in us. Thou art our need, and in giving us more of thyself, thou give us all. Pleasure. Then a hermit who visited the city once a year came forth and said, "Speak to us of pleasure." And he answered, saying, "Pleasure is a freedom song, but it is not freedom. It is the blossoming of your desires, but it is not their fruit. It is a depth calling unto a height, but it is not the deep nor the high. It is the cage taking wing, but it is not space encompassed. Aye, in very truth, pleasure is a freedom song, and I gladly would have you sing it with fullness of heart. Yet I would not have you lose your hearts in the singing. Some of your youth seek pleasure as if it were all, and they are judged and rebuked. I would not judge nor rebuke them. I would have them seek, for they shall find pleasure, but not her alone. 7 are her sisters, and the least of them is more beautiful than pleasure. Have you not heard of the man who was digging in the earth for roots and found a treasure? And some of your elders remember pleasures with regret, like wrongs committed in drunkenness. But regret is the beclouding of the mind, and not its chastisement. They should remember their pleasures with gratitude, as they would the harvest of a summer. Yet, if it comforts them to regret, let them be comforted. And there are among you those who are neither young to seek nor old to remember. And in their fear of seeking and remembering, they shun all pleasures, lest they neglect the Spirit or offend against it. But even in their foregoing is their pleasure. And thus they too find a treasure, though they dig for roots with quivering hands. But tell me, who is he that can offend the Spirit? Shall the nightingale offend the stillness of the night, or the firefly the stars? And shall your flame or your smoke burden the wind? Think you the Spirit is a still pool which you can trouble with a staff? Oftentimes, in denying yourself pleasure, you do but store the desire in the recesses of your being. Who knows but that which seems omitted today waits for tomorrow? Even your body knows its heritage and its rightful need, and will not be deceived. And your body is the harp of your soul, and it is yours to bring forth sweet music from it or confused sounds. And now you ask in your heart, how shall we distinguish that which is good in pleasure from that which is not good? Go to your fields and your gardens, and you shall learn that it is the pleasure of the bee to gather honey of the flower. But it is also the pleasure of the flower to yield its honey to the bee. For to the bee a flower is a fountain of life, and to the flower a bee is the messenger of love. And to both bee and flower, the giving and the receiving of pleasure is a need and an ecstasy. People of Orphalese, be in your pleasures like the flowers and the bees. Jubilant viewers, we appreciate your lovely company for today's Words of Wisdom.